Hello again and welcome to The Luxury of Choice, a B2B sales and business podcast brought to you by the training team of George James Limited. My name is Steve Vaughan. I'm one of the training team here. I'm also the host and producer of this podcast. Today, I have no less than 3 of my colleagues with me. So there's 4 of us here in the podcast. It's going to confuse the hell out of me probably as we go along. But I'm joined today by Jonathan Slasinski, Christian Walter, and Pascal Floch. So guys, how are we all? How are we all feeling? Feeling Christmassy? Getting ready for the big C? It's still a couple of weeks away, thankfully.
My lights are up. We're ready.
Your lights are up?
Lights are up, ready to go.
My wife wants to go and buy a Christmas tree this evening, unfortunately. So I think we're the only house in the street that hasn't got our lights up. Are your lights up yet, Pascal? Do you put Christmas lights up in France?
Yeah, probably I will need to bring some in my room here.
We're just saying, actually, for the benefit of the people who can't see the podcast, you've got a very sort of dark and moody, it's like a book of bedtime kind of location you're coming from right now. And Christian, you're in a nice lit office in Switzerland right now.
Yes. And actually, we're not doing Christmas this year.
Are you not? Of course, you're going away, aren't you? Yeah.
Yes, we're going to South America to catch up with my daughter who is traveling there.
Amazing.
So we'll be on the southern tip in Argentina, in Ushuaia.
Wow.
And it'll be a fantastic experience, I'm sure,
Absolutely.
but it's not exactly Christmassy. So
It'll be their summer, won't it?
the downside is the end of year rush is even bigger, even greater this year. But the upside is in about 8 days, we'll be gone.
Okay. Well, we won't take that personally. But in that case, we better get on with the podcast to get this one in the can. So we'll have a great trip anyway. I'll speak to you before you go. So what are we going to talk about today? What we're going to talk about, the theme for this podcast we've got is managing stakeholder groups, but that's a little bit of jargon, really. So what do we mean by that? It's really, how do we work with organizations that have many, many people that potentially we need to interact with? So it could be a university, it could be a pharmaceutical company, it could be a CRO. But the theme for the podcast is, why is it, or if we do, that we need to have more than a single point of contact in that organization, and who are the sort of people that we need to interact with? So, first of all, let me just put that out there. I mean, do we need to speak to anybody than just the guy in the lab, or can we just spend all our time talking to the guy in the white coat, as I call him? What do we think?
Oh, without a doubt. I think we need to speak to as many people as you can. Again, I remember early on in my career, I talked to probably an end user at the bench and be like, oh, they're the buyer. That's it. I talked to them, that I sold them on my technology, and then you figure out they have no real purchasing power, right?
No, absolutely.
So it's about, do you think about one person as the buyer? No, there's multiple people, whether it's a lab or, as I said, in a pharmaceutical company, it's more about the department and all the people above them. So yeah, got to be interacting with multiple people.
Sure. And Pascal, you're nodding away to that one? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I remember very, very pleasant time, very lengthy and repeated conversations with end users, which led me to nowhere, so just because I was not talking to the right persons.
Right.
Of course, the end users is key, but you have, as Jonathan said, you have to consider the key decision makers, the influencers, and all the people who can play a role into the decision.
So let's look at that in a bit more detail then, guys. And Christian, let's get your thoughts on this. But, are we talking about departments here? Are we talking about people? Talking about people's roles? Or is it some of all these things all merged together?
So I think every sale is different, and there are always multiple stakeholders involved.
Okay, always. Yeah.
Always.
All right.
The added complexity is also that most of salespeople in the life science tool industry, in the lab equipment industry, feel most comfortable talking to lab operators, lab technicians.
Of course.
That's the comfort zone. That's maybe where we come from. It's easy to have a conversation. We can talk about technical stuff. We can talk about applications. It's never cutthroat salesmanship when we speak to the end user. And I think most of us feel more comfortable in that relationship. But as Jonathan and Pascal said, it gets you nowhere.
Mm.
And so we really need to reach out and understand who else is involved.
How do we do that? Because I'm sure we would never do this, but what we don't want to do is say to the person we're talking to, the technical person, the scientist, if you like, who's more important than you. We'd put it quite as bluntly as that, I would hope. So, but how do we do that? What kind of questions could we ask then, guys, to actually get a handle on that?
As you said, Steve, it's, we'll put our trainer hats on. It comes down to qualification, right? And figuring out who are these other people. So to me, it's not about who's more important than you. It's about who else is involved in this purchase. Who else would be utilizing this equipment besides you? And I think from there, if you go up to say you're talking to an end user and then they put you in touch with their PI, then it's the PI you're asking, well, who else is involved in this purchase? Oh, it might be my department chair, right? So you might be starting to learn all these kind of levels after you get away from that one person. And again, it's something I had to learn really, quickly in my career, because I was dead focused on those end users. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's other people I have to talk to too, which is...
Yeah. Well, let's identify these people then, Pascal. So who are the, let's imagine we're talking about a small pharmaceutical company or something. What kind of people are we envisaging that we would have to be involved in talking to here?
Of course, it depends how complex the sale
of course.
is. As Christian say, every sale is different. Nevertheless, what I noticed, and we know that there are different people involved. Of course, there is the end user, the one who is taking care of the project. It could be the end user or the lab manager or a scientist. Then there is, for quite often, the director of the department where the lab manager is. And you have all the other departments around which could play a role, like, procurement, administrative department, IT, if you have some tricky and difficult installations to be considered.
Absolutely.
Quality or regulatory, especially when you have IVD systems, to be installed.
Yeah, good point.
And who else? Yeah, probably operations or facilities as well. So quite often with all those people, we covered. Yeah.
It's quite a list, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a list. And
I think it's an idea to instrumentalize your good relationship with the lab technician,
okay,
the end user.
What does that mean, though?
I'm suggesting that person could be your buddy, and that person could help you to understand who else needs to be convinced.
Right.
Particularly if that lab tech really wants your kit, you can form like a team. You can partner up and say, hey, who else do we need to convince? Who else can I help you to convince? Who else needs to know about this? And do we need to speak to procurement? Do we need to speak to the boss? Who's the boss's boss? Is he involved as well?
Yeah.
Then you can actually utilize this relationship you have, and which is a natural relationship for all of us.
I think that's a great point. There's a couple of questions I used to like asking in this situation. One was, if you were me, who else would you be talking to?
Mm-hmm.
And the other one would be, the last time you bought something like this or this kind of value, who else got involved really, and why? So I think both of those questions can give you a handle on this. Jonathan, I'm going to ask you a question. So out of those various sort of departments and to use the jargon, stakeholder groups that Pascal and Christian described, which do you think is the most misunderstood by people in our business?
Yeah, it's, we've spent, the last couple of minutes just talking about who can affect the sale, right? Who actually can approve the sale, right? But we have to think about the sale as this whole process of installation, training, right? So, I think that, yes, of course, we need to be in front of the PI, the department chair, whoever has that really final approval. The end users are obviously going to get their buy-in. But I think that operations and IT is sometimes some of the most misunderstood people about how much it affects a sale, right? Because that's kind of this whole, we're trying to provide value. We're trying to provide, hey, look, we're in a seamless installation, seamless training. And then if you never connected with operations, your $500,000 sequencer sitting on the dock and it's not up in the lab, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point. I think it's one of the biggest reasons for forecast slippage as well, because nobody found out that, or nobody asked the question of operations, do you have a 3-phase power supply? Or no, it's going to take us 3 months to install one, and go on. Yeah, Christian. Yeah.
I just, every sale is different. And
of course, yeah.
Yes, we need to understand who's the money person. or who's the boss who takes the ultimate decision. But I also still value the relationship we have with the technical people as well.
Oh, of course.
Because the boss will hardly ever buy something against the advice of his trusted lab techs. And particularly in academia, Jonathan, you're familiar with that, with the new generation sequencing and all that, where the buyers are often academics, and then you typically have one lab tech who keeps the whole shop together, who makes sure that they have consumables, who makes sure that the glassware is clean, who makes sure that the benches are tidied up every so often, and because these private investigators are so busy doing their all-important research, but this lab tech holds quite a lot of power because against their explicit guidance, nobody will dare to buy anything because life will be hell afterwards otherwise.
I mean, Christian, I think you bring up a great point, right? When we look at kind of like this foundation, like where's the foundation? Where do we really need to kind of key in?
What's the power?
Back to like what Steve was saying, if it's, again, all sales are different, but if it's capital equipment, as a sales rep, I didn't get paid on that until it was installed.
Yeah. You better know.
If I didn't qualify the voltage, the electric, if it's not going to be able to be moved from a basement up into the third floor for 3 or 4 weeks, that affects the sale, right? So again, yes, we want to get the buyers and we want to get the PO, right? It's the other half of it that I think is also a big part of, what we do in sales.
I had that issue once that we sold a mass spectrometer to Bristol University and the department was on the side of a big hill and there was no way of getting it off the truck up the hill inside to the lab up about 15 flights of stairs. It wasn't my sale, I have to say. It was one of my salespeople, but nobody had thought about how to get it up. Well, I was guilty as well because I didn't ask the question. Anyway, Pascal, you haven't said anything for a while. So what are your thoughts on all this in terms of where we're going?
Yeah, I think that one of the typical traps we fall into in sales is that we have a champion who is quite often the technical or the scientific guy. But the point is that quite often this person doesn't know about the timing when sale can be decided or the purchase can be decided. This person may have not access to the let's say the decision process and also about the budget amount which is available and by when it could be spent. So what I'm saying here is that of course you need to talk about the technical aspects to gain trust from the technical person, the one who decides at the technical level, but you have also to gain trust from the one who will invest and who will sign up.
Absolutely.
And this is quite often the decision maker and this person knows about the strategy. So what I wanted to add here is that when, let's say, I became more and more successful when I started to have a top-down approach instead of a bottom-up approach, meaning that when I identify an opportunity in an account, I quickly started to talk about the strategy of the account, what they want to achieve by the next 2-3 years. And of course, the person you can talk about this is not the scientist, your first contact is more about the top management. And understanding this allows you to position yourself differently. So that's the first point.
Absolutely.
Then bring different type of arguments, elements, which makes you, let's say, moving into the deal in a most effective and fastest. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Pascal, I really love kind of where you're going here, right? Because you identify these stakeholders and then it becomes, okay, top down or bottom up, right? I will say that I spent most of my career bottom up, right? But I was just had a conversation with a guy at the gym yesterday who just took a software startup. And I'm like, how's it going? How's sales going? He's like, I'm not getting any appointments because he's only going after, his directive is just to go after CEOs. And I'm like, well, what about the end user? He's like, that's what I want to do. But the direction of the company now is we're going to start at this level.
But
I do love kind of say you're going to see success. I think it's definitely a mix. But I love how Pascal was talking about the success he had top down, where I can talk about my success from the bottom up. I think it's definitely a mixture.
Can I chip in and
Of course
say
you can.
what we need is a mix?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm actually working with a client who is selling development services, R&D services, very, very good engineers, super smart, super well qualified in this industry. And they've had a very, very much a top-down approach, but they struggled with exactly what Jonathan was just mentioning. It's not so easy to get through with the busy CEOs. And the CEOs are almost too far removed from the project. So actually, we need to go a little bit lower, but they didn't have the contacts. So we are now doing a top-down and bottom-up approach where we try to broaden the contact database so we have a bit more breadth. And then we still try and, of course, have a good relationship with the big cheese.
C-suite, yeah. And in my experience, when you get to talk to those guys, it's often a bit later in the day in terms of the project, and what they want to talk about is absolutely not features and benefits of the instrument, and what this software button does, and how many samples the autosampler takes. So what they want to talk about is what's the return on investment, what's the risk, what could go wrong, does this fit strategically with our directive or our direction as a business strategically as well. And I think
this brings us really nicely to the next topic,
as if I planned it, Christian.
And that's lovely because stakeholder has different set of customer needs.
Okay, yeah.
And during qualification, it's our duty to find out what makes their heart sing. What keeps them up at night, and we need to find answers for that. It is totally different whether you're a lab manager or a scientist or a buyer. They all have different needs. And I think if we identify them, we can be more successful.
What keeps you awake at night, Pascal, when it comes to thinking about selling to complex organizations?
Yeah, I think that who wants to get what? That was really one of the questions I asked myself when I was navigating into a deal. What matters the most to every stakeholder? And knowing this, as Christian just mentioned it, you can articulate the way you present your solution in a different way. Something which will ring the bell or something which will cause impact to the respective stakeholder. So it's more about selling a solution into a strategic positioning to provide solution return on investment at all levels in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do we do when there's a conflict of opinion in the customer account? So when potentially we've got a few people who are kind of going the way that we want them to go, but there's one or two people who we've either haven't identified or we suspect have got a different opinion or possibly even favoring our competitors. So what do we do about that then, Jonathan?
You hope that it's your champion that's going to override their opinion. That's it. Step back. It's about, how do we handle that? And in the situations where that's occurred, it's always been, hey, can we all talk together and figure this out, right? If you can get in with each of the different things and hear their opinions out, and then again, try to counter them with the value props and everything else that you're trying to sell. I've had some success doing that. But sometimes, hey, you hear, oh, someone doesn't like this. Well, can I talk to them? No, they don't want to talk to you. So it's just all about, can you get them in the room? That's the ideal thing, is to be able to hash that out.
And I guess you're never going to make them into your fan, but at least you can perhaps minimize the impact they have, Christian, yeah?
Yeah, I think you should try and do that. Take one step back, Sometimes we have to present to a mixed audience.
Yeah.
So when we do a pitch, a presentation, we have to tell a story to a mixed audience. Maybe the boss is in there, the buyer is in there, the head of R&D is in there, and some scientists. And in the end, this is tricky because they all have different needs. Some may be friendly to us, some may be not so much. And so I think one of the things we need to do is read the room, really read the room. Try not to talk too much, but try and understand where they are all coming from. And then maybe address some of the concerns individually. But I think that's the Champions League of selling, in my opinion.
Yeah, perhaps my team is still in the conference rather than the Champions League, but still. Pascal, you're nodding away to that one. You like that thought? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's the beauty of selling, let's say, being in a complex sales opportunity because you have to bring what different people need in the same room. So if you identified upfront, the different needs and expectations of every stakeholder, again, you can articulate what matters the most and bring your solution in such a way that every people in the room will feel satisfied and enthusiastic about what you bring. And they will evaluate you not on the product anymore, but about the way you can support and serve everyone's interest.
And sometimes you have to play by their rules, don't you, as well? So somebody mentioned IT earlier. I can't even begin to imagine the number of times that I've been involved selling an instrument and somebody from IT has said, "Oh, there's a computer on it." And we say, "Oh, yeah, but it's not connected to anything. It's standalone. I don't care. It's a computer. I've got to approve it. I've got to make sure it's not going to, it uses the right software." And, we'd say, "Oh, no, it's not a computer. It's a data entry station." "Oh, no, it's a computer. You've got to let me validate it and check it." So sometimes you have to play by their rules, guys, don't you? Whether we like it or not.
Of course.
Okay, that was a net conversation finisher, wasn't it?
Especially IT. Yeah, exactly.
What else can go wrong then, guys? I mean, we've talked a bit about identifying these people, but what else could potentially go wrong when we're working in a complex sale?
So I always find that there is there potentially could be a conflict of interest between the buying unit, and I've seen that once upon a time when I sold automatic chloride analysis to a snack food company in the north of England.
I've done that before now.
And yeah, they basically automated all the lab from a manual process to an automatic one. And it was a big change for the lab. And of course, they required a lot less operators after that.
Yeah.
And so the lab staff realized in the sales process that perhaps this is not going to go very well for them in terms of job security. But of course, the management team, the quality team, they knew that if they don't upgrade their analyses, eventually they will be out of business because they have too high a cost structure. So for the company, it was an essential step forward. But there was a lot of resistance to the change from the lab. Understandably, yes. And so, of course, we tried to explain, we tried to maybe, even address the topic proactively, but this was not an easy situation. And I could well imagine that this is a topic that's happening again now. There's a lot of talk on self-driving labs, on fully automated AI-driven labs with robots. And I mean, this is bound to change pharmaceutical research, for example, quite considerably. And salespeople selling this kind of equipment need to be aware that there might be a lot of resistance to this as well. But ultimately, I think it's where the wind will blow. This is going to be the future. Let's face it.
Hopefully, I'll be well retired by then, but still. Pascal, what else can go wrong in complex sales, understanding complex sales?
Yeah, one thing I just popped up in my mind is about the role of and the importance of establishing strong relationships with purchasing departments, especially.
Absolutely.
And quite often, by experience, salespeople, they go at the purchasing department when the project is very advanced and they think they have to negotiate the deal and close the deal. And this is wrong. Sorry to say.
It is absolutely wrong.
Not the right way to go. Ideally, you should establish relationships when you have nothing to sell.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
That's a great.
I just had a conversation regarding that today. Yeah,
I'm going to write that down. Have a conversation with purchasing when you've got nothing to sell. That is brilliant.
Nothing to sell.
Any relationship you need to develop when you don't want to close a sale. I like that.
What do you think of that one, Jonathan?
Yeah, I really love, because I'm thinking like, do I just come in with coffee and see, just learn about what they're doing? But I love that approach, Pascal. But I also kind of like what Chris was saying, like when we think about complex sales, you want to ask, hey, who else is involved in this purchase? Who else, can approve this? But I also like asking, hey, who could decline this, right? So, because it can also come from outside of their scope. It might be another department that already has an instrument where the university is going to say, no, we're not going to spend money on it. It could be competing cores where they don't want to have the same instrument. So I just think being able to understand some of the, again, outside stakeholders, right, that could potentially influence it as well.
Yeah, building contractors. I mean, whenever somebody says we're having a new lab built, whatever time frame they give you, at least double, because they always run late, don't they? Let's be honest. And if I was able to teleport into sales calls right now that are happening across the industry worldwide as we come towards the end of 2025 and people are trying to close their year-end business and get everything delivered and invoiced. Back to your point, Pascal, the kind of conversations I know salespeople will be having right now, or phone calls I'll be trying to make would be, and I'm paraphrasing wildly, and for those listening on the audio only, I'm pretending to hold a phone here. Hello, dear Mr. Purchaser, you don't know who I am, but you've got my order on your desk. Will you please sign my order for me, please? That's effectively what's happening right now because we have no relationship, as Pascal says. And rather than waiting until that very last minute and then hoping that some nice person is going to find my order that's on their desk and dig it out as if, why would they? It's far better to have those conversations much earlier in the process. So when we do need to speak to purchasing, they know who we are. We're in their system. We even, dare I say, got T's and C's. Again, another reason why forecast slips. We haven't agreed T's and C's. We can't deliver, we can't invoice. T's and C's aren't agreed. We can do all that stuff in parallel, can't we? Rather than in series. Don't have to wait until we get the green flag from the technical person.
Can I tell you a provocative secret, Steve?
Please. Is he going to get me thrown off the podcast platform?
Perhaps. But it might be provocative for our audience. Who knows? Maybe we'll get some feedback.
Yeah, why not? Go for him.
So I believe that sales cannot really be rushed. So if we follow the process, we do a lot of work top of funnel, we do a lot of prospecting, we bring opportunities into the funnel, we develop the opportunities, we qualify them well, we understand the decision makers. It naturally progresses through the funnel. We always qualify, we always get a bit closer, we do handle the objections. Eventually, the customer is ready to purchase. Of course, if the financial year is difficult, our natural drive is to try and speed opportunities up, and we phone up and chase them up and say, "Hey, customer, you've had this quote. Can we have the order, please?" I am not sure that's the most productive use of your time.
But we all do.
Ever. Yeah, we all do it because there's a lot of pressure and the bosses need to have their quarterly figures, and I understand all that, and I've done it as well. But my experience in 30 years in this industry is that it hardly ever really works. So the secret to a successful end-year business is to start the year well.
That's a great
and
thought.
Develop lots of opportunities.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Do the stuff right at the get-go. So when it comes to the end of the year, hopefully we're already overplanned, but if we're not, everything's lined up and we're not having to scrabble around trying to find last minute things to bring in, normally at the cost of giving discounts and stuff, frankly, let's be honest.
I would love to hear from Jonathan because he's got the American perspective here. So, I'd love to hear his view on
as our representative.
It's called
of
the
North
hockey
America.
stick, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's every place, everywhere. It's this hockey stick. And I really like we say about, I don't think sales can be rushed because it's the customer's time frame. It's not my time frame, right? It's on what the customer wants to do or what the customer can do. Now, there's things I could do to massage that, but I've been doing this for a while, and I've tried, even in my own personal sales, to try to line up things earlier on in the quarter. But gosh, it always winds up being that hockey stick at the end.
Yeah, that's true.
Hopefully, the right way around, though. If you want upside down hockey stick, or
upside down, where I've made plan already. I talked to a few of my colleagues, and most of them are already sitting a plan already. I'm like, oh my God, that must be nice. I mean, I can remember maybe 3 or 4 times in my career, December, where I was like, check the box, I'm done. So
I was never quite sure though whether the hockey stick is driven by our customers,
by us,
or the hockey stick is driven by us. I was never quite sure about that.
Yeah. Go on, Pascal.
Yeah, I have some thoughts here, and probably one of the, let's say, leveraging effect we can consider is what is the type of deadline you give yourself to get a deal in. what I mean here is that if you start to think about it and you define a deadline, then your brain and yourself, you'll do everything you can to move, to progress, even to accelerate the deal. And of course, you cannot, decide for customers, but at least from your side, you'll do whatever you can to move towards and progressing into the deal.
Absolutely.
And I think it's quite effective for salespeople when they think about the end of the fiscal year, not thinking about the 31st of December as the last day to get orders in, but for instance, thinking about, 18th or 19th of December as the deadline.
Or even earlier, probably if it's academia.
I remember with my team, at the end of the year is not December, it's November or even before, because then you know that you will remind customers, you will go back to your opportunities and make sure you recall, you revisit and so on, so that you can close the deals in time. So that would
That's a super point.
Last tip for today.
I love it.
Oh, please don't go. I think I've mentioned this on this podcast before, but probably the most stupid thing I ever did once as a manager of a business, high risk thing that I did, which thankfully worked out. But I don't recommend this, dear listener, if you're thinking of doing this. We were waiting for a purchase order coming from a leading university in the Midlands, shall we say? Let's not say any more than that, of the UK, for a $500,000 mass spectrometer, and I really needed that delivered and invoiced this quarter. And I was pretty confident it was going to come in, so I ordered it on the factory, and the mass spectrometer was actually parked around the corner from the lab. So when the order came in, we delivered it in half an hour. Now, I don't recommend doing that, because if the order hadn't come in, I'd have had $500,000 worth of excess stock on my figures, and I'd have been a lot of trouble. So that's the silly things we can do if we don't understand buying influence groups, we don't understand the correct process. And again, as I say, guys, I don't recommend.
Good on you that it came through. Well done.
At least I kept my job a bit longer anyway. Final thought from all of you on this. It's been a great discussion. We could carry on for this one all afternoon, but we do try and keep these to about 40 minutes. So go for it, Jonathan. Yeah.
I think kind of just going back to the theme of, every sale is different, right? So we talk a lot about complex sales, but there's those less complex sales. There's those, the ones that are under 5K or 10K.
It's a really good point. Really good point.
And again, so to me, that's that's maybe one or two stakeholders that you have to get to. And then again, now Pascal, that's different timelines, right? Like when I was selling thermal cyclers that were under 5K, I was like, I need 3 a month, right? That was my timeline. I need to get.
That's a great thought.
So just again, think of it, if it's a less complex sale, who do we have to talk to? It's probably not everybody in that chain, but you're still going to make sure that you want to talk to more than one person, or just don't assume that it is that one person.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Final thought from you, Christian?
Yeah, I think, great salespeople and great lovers are alike. Okay. They show a lot of curiosity and empathy. And by curiosity and empathy, we can understand the different stakeholders in the decision group. We can then really come up with the arguments that helps them in their daily life. So that's the empathy, if we understand their daily life. And then we have a group of decision makers that's helping us and not, trying to put obstacles in our way.
Great point. I know you well enough to know that you're a great salesperson, Christian. The other one is a matter for Mrs. Water to comment on.
Let's Pascal, not go there.
Sorry if you're listening, Gillian. Pascal, final thought for you.
Yeah, I also like Valentine's Day and lovers. But back to what can happen in big organizations from customer side. There is some politic power from time to time, and you have to be aware of it. So one key thing here is to make the difference between the official org chart you could be presented and what really happens. Who gets the power, who can influence the others, and especially when there are people against your project, you have to understand who else could neutralize this person.
What could go wrong?
Could minimize, how this person could stop or interfere with your project. So that's about
great point. Yeah, great point. Dear listener, this is a topic that we cover as part of our advanced selling skills scheduled training course that we run in the UK, Switzerland, France, and soon in North America as well. And we also cover it, of course, as part of our tailored training that we do for our customers when customers ask us for a specific training module. So we've tried to cover in a 40-minute podcast, which is actually quite a big topic. It probably takes a couple of days on a training program. But if you found it useful, don't forget to give us a review, hopefully a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. It does help the show in lots of weird and wonderful ways. We'll be back again with a final podcast of 2026 in a couple of weeks' time. Not sure what we're going to do that. I've kind of got an idea of making it like a holiday season podcast, depending on availability of my colleagues there. So hold your thought and watch this space. If we don't get around to doing it, it'll be something to do with selling, because that's what we do, of course. In the meantime, please tell your friends and colleagues about the podcast. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks with something in terms of a podcast. Until then, happy selling, and we'll talk to you soon.